With global demands for electricity increasing with population size, the levels of greenhouse gases emitted from present sources of electricity are not sustainable. Fossil fuels and coal power plants are known to contribute to massive amounts of greenhouse gas emissions, especially in countries that still use coal as a means of energy. More than ever, we need a cleaner form of electricity generation in order to sustain both humans as well as Earth.
One alternative source of electricity is through nuclear energy. Surprisingly, Canada produces 1/3 of the world's uranium. The production of nuclear energy involves a nuclear reactor that splits the bonds of uranium atoms, either enriched uranium in the form of uranium-235 or uranium-238 through nuclear fission.
This reaction releases heat that is then used to boil water, which creates steam. The steam and water are then separated, and the steam is used to spin turbines which sit inside a generator, and that causes electricity.
One of the biggest challenges when it comes to establishing nuclear power plants is breaking the stigma surrounding nuclear radiation. With dangers to human health as the main concern, society tends to focus on the negative connotation of nuclear power, while dismissing the possibility of abundant clean energy that it could provide.
Although nuclear energy is a type of energy that does not emit greenhouse gases, the energy production does create nuclear waste, which can affect both the environment and organisms. A study that observed germination of seeds from 20 species of plants from the Chernobyl area showed that there was a negative relationship between seed germination rate when they're exposed to low doses of ionizing radiation. There's also the problem of thermal pollution created from highly energetic nuclear reactions. Cooling water used in nuclear power plants is released back into the environment by being discharged into lakes, which creates thermal stress as a result. This contributes to anthropogenic climate change and creates long-lasting effects on lake ecology by affecting all its biogeochemical processes.
In the year 1986, the world saw one of the worst man-made disasters, the Chernobyl accident. A nuclear power plant in Chernobyl, Ukraine had experienced a meltdown due to flawed nuclear reactor and both poor maintenance and operation of untrained personnel. A more recent meltdown occurred in Fukushima, Japan in 2011. This accident started with a massive earthquake that shook Japan to its core. Following this earthquake, a 15-meter tsunami hit the shores of Japan. The tsunami completely disabled all power supply in the Fukushima area. Along with that, the mechanics of cooling the 3 Fukushima nuclear reactors caused the meltdown to occur. In addition to this, 4 other Fukushima nuclear reactors were written off due to extensive damage. The meltdown came with high radioactive releases within the first week, which urged government officials to perform an emergency evacuation for citizens within the active vicinity. The evacuation zone extended from 2 kilometers within the first hours of the meltdown to 20 kilometers the next day, effectively causing 100,000 citizens to evacuate the area. There has been no recorded deaths associated with radiation exposure from the meltdown to date. However, due to urgent evacuation, there has been around 100,000 documented deaths from a lack of resources to maintain maintenance for evacuation and those that need it. The Japanese government took extra care in preventing any radioactive substances from leaking into the ocean water, which was a feat that prevented the destruction of the marine life surrounding Japan and the contamination of an important biome for Japanese food source. Although many died in the light of the meltdown, primarily due to the secondary effects following, the effects of radiation was limited due to early evacuation efforts and proper handling of the meltdown. Notably, research has shown that death rates following the Fukushima nuclear disaster mirror the deaths following Chernobyl's nuclear disasters in areas exposed to high radiation. However, nuclear energy also plays a role in the local sense, as explained by Master Ward Officer Stephen Stan.
So there's many users of nuclear or radioactive sources in Canada. So you have within the construction and mining industry, for looking at different densities in construction. So there's a lot of actual nuclear material that is in the market and is used safely every day, 365. The Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission has standards that are in place for licensing on how much you can have on one site. So all the licenses are based on what you can hold.
So it's safe to say we're quite a bit better off than the US, where they just kind of keep moving around their nuclear waste?
Well, when it comes down to, they've got the fact that they use theirs in missiles. They are moving these things around in certain disposal sites. The NATO standard versus and the Canadian military's standard radioactive material is taken quite seriously.
Yeah.
On the disposal side, that's kind of out of my purview.
Can you tell us a bit about what sort of organizations exist to sort of mitigate any safety risks?
So, nuclear safety is federally regulated. From a responder perspective, the Alberta Emergency Management Agency would have a response, triage sort of capability on that of who do I call for some of the smaller rural departments that wouldn't have a full-time hazardous materials team.
Yeah.
When it comes down to how the sites, so University of Alberta, is in the process of decommissioning their Slowpoke reactor. So there's things in Alberta that, and actually the University of Alberta is one of the leading institutions for managing nuclear safety. The audit process is very alive on that for sources.
So obviously in a post 9/11 environment, things changed quite a bit for the federal government, and I imagine both the municipalities and the provinces. Has any of those threats ever been kind of taken as anything more than a vague threat, in your knowledge?
We're not the target that an Ottawa necessarily is, or a Toronto is. Where our capability is, we can recognize a radioactive source when it's there. Where other municipalities have taken it a bit farther with radioisotope identification, where that's getting a bit too far on when you have a generalized responder background. But every municipality has a different threat perspective.
Right, awesome. What's your opinion more specifically on nuclear energy and the generation of that?
Like personally, I think carbon emissions and the amount of space that you're using, like it's not a hydroelectric where you're using these grassed areas of space, or it is more of a political issue when it comes down to risk perspective, where the amount of energy that is being used to generate oil and gas, to have nuclear energy would be a better resource of that, but politically in Alberta, it seems like as a province we are not willing to go down that road. Whereas Ontario has really doubled down on nuclear energy, and every incident that happens, it gets more and more safe.
So far, all of the mentioned aspects of nuclear energy have been on the negative end of the spectrum. However, even though there are some negative connotations that may arise from both the production and usage of nuclear energy, it's not an entirely negative energy source.
For example, think of your own day-to-day energy demands. The average Canadian home consumes roughly 11,000 kilowatts of electricity per year. Now imagine that on a scale of large cities that are constantly demanding electricity, such as Toronto or Vancouver.
The energy demands of these areas, specifically big cities, have such large energy demand that mass burning of coal or natural gas will result in environmental devastation. Therefore, nuclear energy is a valuable stopgap in that process, that while clean energy is allowed to mature.
Research has predicted that all of the possible energy sources, nuclear power plants will result in the smallest emission of greenhouse gases and subsequently in the smallest proportion of greenhouse gas human-related deaths.
Nuclear technology is also advancing. Consider, for example, nuclear reactors. The traditional standard PWR nuclear reactor requires enriched uranium isotopes, which it degrades, causing mechanical rotation of turbines. This process leaves behind residual byproducts.
However, the CANDU breeder reactor is a recent type of reactor that uses heavy water instead of uranium to produce thermal and mechanical energy. The reactor does not absorb neutrons, which then can be used for later reactions.
This process has the ability to convert many other forms of radioactive material, therefore providing many more options for nuclear material. And also, since the CANDU breeder reactor is not a pressurized system, it is significantly safer than the traditional PWR reactor.
Changing to the realm of medicine, the radioactive isotopes used for machines such as MRIs and CT scans are derived from using the byproduct of nuclear energy production. Therefore, nuclear energy production does not only involve creating energy, but it also involves the medical realm as well.
The need for an alternative clean fuel source is becoming more and more of a reality with each passing day. One alternative clean source could be through the use of nuclear energy. While nuclear energy may bring upon its own issues concerning safety, the disposal of long-lasting waste materials, and warfare, it can in fact provide an effective and healthy alternative to energy production. It is an item that dwells in the realm of medicine, energy, and our day-to-day activities. While its history may be tainted with the harsh realities from improperly managed efforts to produce energy and threats of nuclear warfare in the modern context, it can become a greatly effective ally in the world of energy production, if and only if it is maintained and used responsibly. This means tight regulations, consistent monitoring, properly trained operators, and maintenance. Incidents such as Chernobyl and Fukushima should be a reminder that it is not something that we should overlook. But it is also a method for reducing greenhouse emissions, an issue which is quite evident in the modern day context within both ecological and anthropological realms. The main take-home message is that nuclear energy works, but it requires careful attention in its entire process before, during, and after. Thank you.